So let's talk about a book that for decades was considered one of the greatest achievements in medical history. It's an anatomy atlas, filled with some of the most beautiful and detailed illustrations of the human body ever created. But it's also a book with a horrifying secret, one that's tied directly to one of the darkest times in human history.
This quote from Rabbi Joseph Pollack just hits the nail on the head. A moral enigma. That's exactly what this is. It's a direct clash between the absolute evil of how it was made and the incredible good it could potentially do. It forces us to ask some really, really tough questions.
And that really brings us to the big question we're tackling here. What do you do? What do we all do when a tool that could literally save lives comes from a place of pure, murderous hate? To really get a grip on this, we've got to look at both sides of the coin. The masterpiece and the monster who created it.
Okay, so before we dive into the really heavy stuff, you have to understand why this atlas is even still a topic of conversation. For a very long time, it wasn't seen as controversial at all. It was just the best, an absolute masterpiece of science and art.
I mean, this wasn't just any anatomy book. For surgeons, especially those doing incredibly delicate operations, the Pernkopf Atlas was in a league of its own. You have someone like Dr. Susan Mackinnon saying that for the tricky stuff, like mapping out tiny peripheral nerves, nothing else even comes close. The illustrations were just stunning, so vivid, so detailed, with these layers that peeled back to human body. It really was the gold standard.
Yeah, but here's the thing. You absolutely cannot separate the genius of the book from the darkness of the man who made it. To understand the atlas, you have to understand Dr. Eduard Pernkopf, who was both a brilliant anatomist and a deeply committed Nazi.
And when you look at his career, it's chilling. His academic success and his rise in the Nazi Party weren't separate tracks. They were the exact same track. He joins the Nazi Party, he gets promotion. He joins the stormtroopers. He gets promoted again. As the Nazis seized more power, so did Pernkopf, until he was running the entire University of Vienna.
And as soon as he got that power, he didn't waste a second. One of his very first acts as dean was to completely purge the medical school. He made everyone swear an oath of loyalty directly to Hitler, and then he fired anyone who was Jewish or who didn't support the Nazis. Think about that for a moment. 153 out of 197 faculty members, that's nearly 80% of them, including 3 Nobel Prize winners, just gone. He was literally reshaping the university in the Nazi image.
So for decades, doctors and students used this atlas without ever questioning it. But as time went on, a few people started looking closer, really looking at the pages. And they began to notice things. Disturbing little details that started to unravel a truly horrific story.
And the clues, well, they were hiding in plain sight. First, you've got the artist's signatures. One of them, Eric Lapierre, actually hid a swastika in his name. Another, Karl Entresser, used the double lightning bolt symbol of the SS. Then there were the subjects themselves. Some of the figures looked like prisoners. They had crudely shaved heads or appeared incredibly thin and emaciated. And when you put that together with the fact that there was a Nazi law funneling the bodies of executed prisoners straight to anatomy labs, like Pernkopf's, it started to paint a very, very grim picture.
By the mid-1990s, this wasn't just a whisper anymore. It was a roar. Organizations like Yad Vashem, the Holocaust Remembrance Center in Israel, started formally asking questions. The pressure mounted until the University of Vienna really had no choice but to confront its own past. In 1997, they finally opened an official investigation into the origins of the atlas.
And what that investigation found was just staggering. This number here, 1,377. That is the minimum number of bodies of executed people that were sent to Pernkopf's Anatomy Institute during the Nazi years. And these weren't unclaimed bodies from the morgue. These were people. Political prisoners, Jews, Roma people, gay people. Anyone the Third Reich condemned to death.
The university's own final report was absolutely damning. It concluded there was, and I quote, "no doubt that the bodies of Nazi victims were used at the institute, and it was assumed with considerable certainty that those same bodies were the subjects of the illustrations in the atlas." The connection wasn't a theory anymore. It was a confirmed, horrific fact. The publisher had actually already stopped printing it a few years earlier, but this report, this sealed it.
But confirming the awful truth didn't end the conversation. In fact, it's what kicked off this massive ethical debate that's still going on right now. Can we, or maybe more importantly, should we, use knowledge that was created through such profound evil?
And this is where it gets really, really complicated. On one hand, you have surgeons who say, look, my number one duty is to my patient. If this book gives me the clearest possible map to save someone's life or keep them from being paralyzed, isn't my moral duty to use it? Some even say that using it as a way to honor the victims, to make sure something good came from their sacrifice. But then the argument on the other side is just as powerful. If you use this, aren't you becoming complicit? Aren't you benefiting from murder, and in a way, justifying the evil that created it?
And this isn't just some abstract philosophical thing. They actually surveyed nerve surgeons, the exact people who would get the most out of this atlas, and look at these results. It's not a simple yes or no. Well, yeah, a majority said they were comfortable using it. You still have almost a third of them who are either undecided or flat out uncomfortable. It just goes to show you, even for the experts on the front lines, there is no easy answer here.
So when you boil it all down, the Pernkopf Atlas is more than just a book. It's become this symbol for a much bigger, much more universal question about how we, as a society, are supposed to handle knowledge that comes from a truly evil place.
You know, if there's any kind of silver lining to this whole horrible story, it might be this. It's changed how we teach medicine. The story of this atlas is now used as a powerful, real-world case study in medical schools. It forces future doctors to face the fact that science never, ever exists in a vacuum. It's a brutal, powerful lesson that just because something is scientifically possible doesn't mean it's ethically right.
And this quote from Dr. Howard Spiro, wow, it just perfectly captures that tension. He says, in each illustration, he can hear the scream of a person. It's not just a drawing of a nerve, it's the remnant of a life. And in that way, the atlas becomes both a tool and a terrible warning, like a head on a pike, showing us exactly where we must never, ever go again.
And so that leaves us and you with this massive question. What is our responsibility here? Do we throw away the knowledge, trying to bury the sins of the past along with it? Or do we use it while always remembering and acknowledging its horrific origins in the hope of creating some good in the world today? The Pernkopf Atlas doesn't give us any easy answers, not a single one, just a profound and I think permanent challenge to our conscience.